Hello folks, it's the Spice Must Flow. I am back again. Let me adjust my camera real quick. There we go. Alright, it has been a bit of time since I've done a video. We've been busy at work. Work is going well though. And this video today is about an article which I read, which was a blog post. I do have it linked in the description. And it is a very interesting article. It's talking about retribution here. That is what the article is saying. It's basically saying that if one looks at this last election, if one looks at what the left was advocating for, what they've talked about, what they have been interested in doing basically this whole time, to the deplorables, those of us who voted for Trump, that basically it's not over, and that there's a very good chance that they will win, if not in 4 years, then in 8, and we would be best to use this time to prepare. The article allowed me to basically put a good amount of thought into this. I have seen a lot of people on social media, various social media sites, who were in the basket of the deplorables, much like myself, were whooping and hollering. Okay, Trump's been in for a while now, although not that long, but he's been in for a while now, and we're still posting our dank memes. We are still trying to be edgelords, and we're still very satisfied with ourselves. And I believe that this is the absolute wrong way to go right now. Okay, Trump winning was in fact a reprieve. The truth of the matter is, I personally do look at how millennials vote. I look at what they think. I look at the foundations of this country, and I look at the axes, if you will, upon which it is divided. I look at the county maps on the elections, and I also consider that even though I live in a fairly conservative state, that the moment that I go into the major city that is close to me, I get attitudes and opinions and beliefs that are very, very similar to what you might find in San Francisco or Los Angeles or any one of a number of college campuses on which they would likely beat down a Trump supporter. However, when I get really not even outside of the metro area itself, but just simply get into the suburbs, the opinion changes. The politics change. And by the time that I actually get into a rural area, I mean, I'm in Trump country, right? I remember back when the election was going on, I had a much different job than I do now. And it was a job where I was driving a vehicle around. And I had to drive it sometimes into the city. I had to drive it sometimes out, into rural areas and everywhere in between. And doing that, you could tell. What was interesting actually was that you never really saw very many Hillary signs anywhere. I think I saw about as many Bernie signs as I saw Hillary Clinton signs, even after Bernie lost the Democratic primary. The moment I got into rural areas, all I saw was Trump. Saw plenty of them in the suburbs too. But what intrigues me about this entire situation, though, is that dynamic has not changed. Okay, the country's still split. The battle lines, if you will, are still drawn. And when one looks at what has happened in terms of immigration in this country, and the fact that at best 1 in 5 immigrants, if you take all immigrants, you remove whether they what race they are, what religion they are, whether they're a male or a female or anything of that nature, you just take all immigrants into the country and you look at their voting patterns, you will notice that immigrants, only 1 in 5 of them is going to vote Republican. That is basically the statistical reasoning. So without a serious limitation on immigration, period, we lose. We as conservatives are going to lose. That's all there is to it. We might still lose just based upon the birth rates and the folks that are out there. And the fact that even now, even after all of these statistics are true, Trump still has his own party fighting him. Okay. But this isn't really exactly about that. What this is about more so is what the blog article actually said in terms of us using this time. Okay. I've met various conservatives at this point whose basic response upon finding out what happened with Milo Yiannopoulos in Berkeley, or what has happened since, or any of the various acts of violence perpetrated by leftists, or any of the things that happened when Trump was running for the nomination and then for the presidency. Their basic response is, "But my guns." Okay, you have guns. Cool. What are you doing with them? I'm not suggesting you go out and shoot people. That's not what I'm doing. I'm saying, do you train with them? Do you know how they work? Or are they just simply a really nice paperweight that's very expensive? What's more, I mean, guns are not a magical talisman. I also see a lot of people who are like, well, I shitpost on the internet. Or I do edgy, or edgy memes. I have dank memes, blah, blah, blah. There's a real problem with this. You have to realize that as we speak right now, at this very moment, the left is not sleeping. And they're not posting dank memes. They're organizing. From the word go, from the very moment that Trump actually won, they had about 3-4 days to grieve, and then they decided that the word was resist. And they've been doing this ever since. This is why they're showing up and protesting. And now, some of them have decided that they're going to try to learn how to commit acts of violence. And they're saying it's defensive. It's for defensive reasons, etc. We can choose to believe that or not believe that, but that is what they're doing. Okay, what are we doing? You have to realize that I personally became a Donald Trump supporter that was ardent, not because of what he said, but because of something which happened in my presence that I saw. When Trump announced, I heard the speech, I heard what he had to say, and I thought to myself, okay, well, this is my guy. It's obvious that illegal immigration is a problem. It's obvious that we have very poor trade deals, and it's also very obvious that the Republican Party is not really listening to its base. So here is a guy that, even if he was lying, at least would address the issues. And he also didn't really seem to care what the media said about him, which I also appreciated as well. In fact, I appreciated that almost as much as I appreciated, what he was actually choosing to stand for. The issue, however, was when I went to a Trump rally. I went to a Trump rally before he was nominated, and outside of it, there were a large line of leftists. Okay. And they were harassing people. They were harassing people. They were acting with violence. They were stealing things. The only thing that really protected the people who were Trump supporters from these folks were the line of police that were there. And the interesting thing was the surprising lack of violence from the Trump supporters. Actually, knowing Trump supporters, it's not all that surprising that we were restrained in our actions. But, I mean, it changed me. So, to me, after that, it wasn't a matter of, oh, there's a political difference in this country. I'm going to select the guy who represents my political interests more than this person, and I hope we win. It became, I better vote for this guy. I better try to convince people to vote for this guy, or I'm going to a death camp. And a lot of people would say that is extreme. That's very extreme. That's way too extreme. Why would you say that? The answer is, I have no idea what sort of person Hillary Clinton was, whether she honestly would try to attack the First Amendment or not, whether she would try to find people like me that will speak their minds or not. I don't know. What I do know, though, is that a lot of her supporters did want to silence me, did want to silence the people around me. And not only that, but they wanted to hurt us. Looking at that reality, changed me. It made me begin to realize that this was not like any other election that I had lived through, and it was definitely not like any election I could remember. And the thing is this. At this point, I've come to understand a variety of things about the left that I did not understand before. Probably the biggest realization is that most of the people on the left are not religious, nor are they spiritual or anything of that nature in any conventional way. That's not necessarily a bad statement. I certainly am neither religious nor spiritual. I guess you could say, if I'm anything, I'm a secular humanist. But my definition of that and their definition of that is quite different, we'll just say. The truth of the matter is, for these folks, because they don't have a religious or a spiritual framework, for most of them, they don't really exactly have a moral framework either. At least not one informed by any sort of traditional religious thought. So what they do, instead of having that part of themselves, they will turn politics into their religion. And certain things that could just be different become evil. Everything becomes a matter of good and evil to a large degree, which is kind of funny given that they are big fans of the concept of cultural relativism. But as with many things on the left, these terms don't, basically there is no actual logical consistency to what they're doing or thinking. And for the most part, they do not understand or appreciate irony. The real issue at hand that you have to realize regarding these folks on the left is that when Trump won, it wasn't just a turning, okay, of another presidential cycle. What happened is Hitler won. The Hitler Satan won, okay? These folks, this element within the Democratic Party that are these people that do have these beliefs, will try to suppress the right. They will try to suppress people like me. If you are a Trump supporter, they're going to try to suppress you. And everything that we have, everything that we do, it's online. If you've posted a dank meme, okay, in the past, they can find it. If you said, yay, Trump, they can find it. Okay. If you've offered any political commentary at all, it can be found. Okay. So we can all be located. And the truth of the matter is, as I said, you know, the leftists in question here The problem is not that they are all of the Democratic Party. The problem is not even that they're most of the Democratic Party. The problem is that they are an incredibly incredibly powerful pressure group within the Democratic Party. And the other Democrats will not stand in their way. They won't stand up to the oppression that these folks are ready to unleash against people on the right. So, with that said, what I want to advocate for is that us deplorables, okay, us folks that Hillary Clinton said were irredeemable and said we belong in a basket, right? What we have to do right now, while we definitely can, is move off of just being on the internet. What I mean by this is, look, we commanded the internet. Okay, we set up networks, we set up communications with one another across huge swaths of the country. We were able to edgelord, we were able to communicate, we were able to communicate not only amongst ourselves, but also to an extent with the people in general. And we were actually able to counter the narratives of the mainstream media. Citizen journalism on that level has never exactly happened that way. And yet it did. It did this time. But this isn't enough. The problem is, while we are online, while we are just guys, much like myself right now making this video, doing all of this, we're isolated. We have no communication with one another if we don't have access to the social media platforms. In fact, we have seen how Twitter, Facebook, YouTube to a lesser extent, various social media platforms have blocked certain people. Now, on a tech level, there are ways around that. We can set up our own tech sites, okay? We can set up a competitor to Twitter. We can set up a competitor to Facebook. We can set up a competitor to YouTube. We can do anything of that nature if it becomes a necessity. Okay, we could even arguably drop into their market share simply by actually enforcing freedom of speech. The problem is, what if there is no avenue? What if everything's cut off? What if, I mean, horror of horrors, it would be the worst thing possible, but what if the left simply discovered at some point that they didn't really have to even keep up with the pretense that we live in a free country with the First Amendment? How will we communicate? So what I'm suggesting is not anything violent. It is not anything crazy. It's just a simple, and I would argue, good idea. And that is, we need to find each other on a local level. We need to set up groups and form ultimately what are communities. See, one of the only good ideas really that I saw from people in the Hillary camp is when after the election they all started wearing safety pins. At first I made fun of it. This is like, oh, you little safe space sissies. But then I thought about it. Here are these folks. They're all wearing something that allows them to know that they're not alone, that other people as well believe as they do. Okay, and not only that, but they were able to talk about stuff with each other. They were able to open a form of communication on a very local level. They were able to use the internet in a general sense to spread a construct, and then everybody was able to use it on a local level. And various people amongst the left have been meeting up on a local level. You think these protests that have happened, do you think these people don't talk with each other? Of course they do. Now, I know. A lot of people have said, oh, well, there's money from Soros. There's money from various Democratic, um, groups. There's various community organizing groups involved. I get that. But still, and the money, it's a big deal. But here's the issue with that. With just saying, oh, yeah, it's the money. Well, no. It's about the people. The money helps the people. The money gets people into places they need to be. But people still have to get up out of bed. They have to find time out of their schedules, whatever it is they're doing, and they have to go to these meetings. The left has been forming these communities. We on the right have to start doing this. It's one thing to say, my guns will protect me. Really, will they? One person with a gun doesn't really mean a lot. Let's be honest here. And frankly, we're not to that point. We're not to the violence point. I mean, not to the mass scale violence point. That's right. I mean, even after all of the things that the various leftists have done in various places, macing us, beating us, doing very, very bad things to us, right? They're still testing us. This is not open warfare, okay? They're trying to see how far they can go. They're trying to see how many people they can intimidate and how well it's going to work. So what I'm saying is that before you go into the whole, well, they can't ever come to get us because we have guns argument, because that isn't how it would happen anyway. What we need to do is form communities. Hang out with each other. Frankly, we need to figure out a way to, first of all, find out who amongst us is cool, right? See, most of us are going to be cool. Most of us are going to be good people that we can hang out with, that we can get along with, right? Yeah, there's going to be some crazy people that'll show up too. We also have to be able to filter out the infiltrators. People on the right have already infiltrated leftist groups. They have. And they've also reported various terroristic goings-on to members of local law enforcement. Some of whom have been concerned with it, and others of whom have not cared because, well, the political leaders in those cities support it. So, I mean, Baltimore. Wow, it's wow, that's a bad cough there. We got to do the same thing. Not what Black Bloc and Antifa is doing. I'm not talking about that. I'm just simply saying, look, I understand. A lot of us have jobs. A lot of us have families. A lot of us, our lives are not politics. They don't revolve around politics. And this is kind of cribbing something from Saul Alinsky, right? He basically says, you got to make it fun, right? Well, here's the thing. When I say we have to form a community, I'm not talking about we all meet up somewhere at some place and talk obsessively about politics. I'm saying that we find fellow deplorables and we hang out. We have some barbecues with each other. We drink some beers with each other. We don't even necessarily talk about politics. A lot of us have kids, right? Especially if your children are younger. Well, take them all to whatever local place you have where kids can go play, and then you guys hang out. Okay? This is something we need to do. Because if the left is, in fact, this bad, and you know what? Sometimes when I think, gee, they can't be that bad, they then prove to me, no, they are, in fact, that bad. Well, we're going to need somebody that can back us up. Okay? We're going to need somebody watching our six. We're going to need people around us that we know that we can trust. If things do get to a point where the left actually has a numerical advantage that is consistent on a regular basis, as well as an electoral advantage, okay, and they don't have to pay attention to the First Amendment, and they damn sure don't have to pay attention to the Second Amendment, okay, and they can basically do whatever they want. We'll need each other to protect us. And if they can control the internet and control the main social media platforms, and let's face it, Silicon Valley is mostly leftist. Okay. It might be a faux leftism. They may not actually be for communism. Okay. But they certainly are not in our camp, right? We're going to have a connection to each other on the ground. So these are my thoughts. Okay. This is one of the various things that I do want to speak about in the future, is how we start doing that, how we start meeting up, how we start getting around each other, trying to enjoy each other's company. And as I said, when this starts, okay, this isn't some sort of weird militia activity. This is not some sort of, strictly political thing. Okay, it needs to be us just simply finding like-minded people. Because here's the thing, and this is a cultural thing that is going to help us very seriously. At the end of the day, and this is something I've noticed from knowing and befriending quite a few leftists down through the years, we live very different lives. That's right, people on the right, we tend to live differently than people on the left. Okay, and we probably are going to get along better with each other than just some random group of people simply because of it. Okay. Any rate, though, this is this is all I'm saying here. The spiced must flow. Why do I have to choose that name? Oh yeah, I love Dune.